What do we mean when we talk about representation in the classroom? More specifically, representation in our language classrooms. How can we make sure that our students understand the wide variety of cultures and experience that are part of the target language culture? In this episode, Jenniffer Whyte joins me to talk about bringing the Afro-Latinx and Black experience into our classroom curriculum. You will walk away with concrete ways to go about this and might even be ready to put together an all-school event or assembly at no cost. Jenniffer tells us all about how she does it. So let's jump in. Are you a language teacher looking for some reassurance that what you're doing in the classroom is on the right track? Or maybe you're looking for some ways to teach even more effectively. If you're one or the other or somewhere in between, you've landed in the right place. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast with your host, me, Joshua Cabral. You're about to get tips, tools, and resources so that your students continue to rise in proficiency and communicate with confidence. Let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and you know I have to start every episode by reminding you that you're an incredible language teacher. You're listening to a podcast about language teaching. You're looking at what you're doing in your classroom. You're finding that you're on the right track, right where you want to be. You're getting some new ideas to enhance what you're doing. But that right there makes you an incredible educator. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your week to do that. So thank you on behalf of your teachers, the parents, your colleagues, everyone. So on today's episode, we are going to be talking about Black history and Hispanic heritage in our language curriculum. And to have this conversation with me, we are joined by Jenniffer Whyte. Now, Jenniffer Whyte is such an incredibly dedicated educator, and I've known her for a while. She's been on the podcast in the past, and I'm going to gush about her a little bit and tell you about the wonderful things about her. And she'll be the first one to tell you that from a cultural standpoint, she's not one to really show everything that she's doing at all these great things. And even before we started talking, I said, in your bio, it didn't mention that you were the SCOLT language teacher of the year and you were up for the ACTFL language teacher of the year in 2022. And she was like, I'm not one to really talk about myself like that. So I wanted to take this opportunity to remind everyone that in addition to everything I'm about to say about Jenniffer Whyte, she was also the 2022 SCOLT language teacher of the year and was up for the ACTFL language teacher of the year. But Jenniffer has been teaching for 25 years, and she's currently at the Donahoe School in Anniston, Alabama. But she began her teaching career at Miami Senior High's Center for Teaching Profession, and she was trained to instruct students at all levels. But at the Donahoe School, she's working with all levels as well, from pre-K and kindergarten and first grade, and those 8th graders all the way through 12th grade. And she also teaches English and Spanish to adults using WhatsApp. So that's really combining her passion for language education in a really innovative digital world. She is going to be at AATSP in Panama this summer, and she will be presenting there. So if you're there, you can look for her. And she's doing a lot of work with AATSP. She's actually the chair for the secondary education on the board. So I could go on and on and on about you, Jenniffer Whyte, but it is such a pleasure to have you with us today. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for having me. I'm really excited to be here, too.
Yes. So I mentioned that you're going to be at AATSP in Panama. So could you tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see there?
Yes, I'm really excited about having this conference in Panama because my husband's from Panama, so I just love visiting there. But just the culture and the music and the people are just amazing. At the conference, I'm going to be doing several things. There's so much stuff involved in this conference. I'm so excited because Rosa, our president, she's Panamanian, so she's doing great things. So I'm going to be presenting 3 sessions. One session is about all Spanish music. So you come in and you take a break from all the sessions and you come into my session and you're going to be dancing. And then you take with you a lesson about how to incorporate dancing into your classroom and all this stuff. We're going to be introducing all the different rhythms of dance. Spanish rhythms. And then I'm gonna do all Portuguese rhythms. So if you want to come into the Portuguese party, and it's kind of like a break from going to the different sessions. You come into my class, to my session, not my class. You go into my session, and you're gonna be hearing some Portuguese music and just get down and dance. And then the last, which is my favorite one, is that I'm gonna be teaching any teacher that comes to my session the typical folk dance of Panama. So they're going to come in, they're going to learn the basic steps. And then from there, 5 teachers who believe they're the best ones, or we think they're the best ones, are going to perform at the final gala. So we're so excited about teachers probably don't get experiences like that at conferences where they can go and learn the typical dance of the country. So with the help of Panamanians, and there's going to be a Panamanian folk group there that's going to be guiding me as well, then we're going to be there to help teachers just get out of their classroom mindset and go into a more like immersion of the culture mindset.
That is very exciting. So listeners, if you are thinking about going to AATSP in Panama City this summer, hopefully you are feeling a little more inspired to go. I will actually be in Nicaragua. That's where I am in the summer. I will be there during the conference, and it's 2 countries away in a short flight. So I'm definitely going to try to jump on a flight from Managua to Panama City and be able to attend this year. So that would be very exciting.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
So as we start this conversation about Black history, Hispanic heritage in the language classroom, I want to start with the word representation. And we often use this terminology about representation in the classroom. And before we even get into that word, I think it's important for us to understand your personal place and experience. Now, you have a podcast that's called the Afro-Latina Teacher in the Rural South. So that in itself I mentioned the title to someone the other day, and they said, well, that's really on the nose. It's very obvious that that's what the podcast is. So tell us a little bit about that experience specifically for you, and then we'll talk about why representation is so important.
Yes, Afro-Latina Teacher in the Rural South, came about because it was, as I was traveling to different teacher conferences, I met other Afro-Latina teachers. And then they to me, they were like so lucky because, quote unquote, lucky because they would be around other Afro-Latinos and they get to eat their food. They get to go to restaurants, Cuban restaurants, Dominican restaurants, all these Caribbean restaurants that I wish I could go. My experience is not like that. I'm like totally removed from everything that has to do with my culture. It's like if I'm in an island. And then I'm having to deal with people that probably never been to my country, people that don't even know what Dominican Republic is. And I'm having to be that representation there. So with that title, it's like, it's perfect because it's like me bringing in my point of view, my love for culture, my love for my country, my love for teaching, bringing it to the rural South, which has been a great experience. And I recently was doing the civil rights trail in my city, and I was just going from monument to monument, and I was just crying because I'm like, wow, look at me. I'm all the way from Dominican Republic, but I get to walk this trail that these people have walked through and have suffered through and have gained insight. They've given me insight through it. So this is why I have really immersed myself in the culture of Alabama and the rural South culture, and I love it. So now I have become a Afro-Latina teacher in the rural South because I go boating, I go hunting, my church is in the forest, it's everything that Alabamians like to do. My husband and I, we now like to do.
Thank you. It's always good to have that context. And I do love the title of your podcast.
Thank you.
It's incredibly clever, and you know just what you're getting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So let's continue on with this word representation in the language classroom. And I would be interested to know, what are some resources or materials that teachers can use to ensure that Black and Afro-Latinx voice is really authentically included in their curriculum? And I think the word authentic is really important because we can sort of add things in, but in a way that is truly meaningful. What are some of those materials we might be looking for?
Yeah, it's always good to always be listening around for podcasts and Netflix shows and anything that can connect the student to to the culture, because nowadays kids love videos and they love short videos. So
Mhm.
I like connecting students with the culture through short videos. I'm always looking for YouTube videos because I don't have access to Afro-Latino people here. I probably do, but they're probably not the type that will come to my classroom. But I know that through storytelling, I use myself as a resource. And I've always told teachers, hey, if you want me to come to your classroom, or we could arrange that, or I could record a video, always is good to even meet those Afro-Latina teachers or Afro-Latinx teachers that are in our profession and invite them into your classroom through a video, because sometimes we don't have time to go to interviews and stuff. But if you could record a short video and tell them, hey, can you talk about fashion for my class? Just do something for 5 minutes and record about fashion. And, you could do that and send it to a class, and they could see it like, this is my friend Jenniffer, and she's doing this. She loves this fashion. And I could be speaking in Spanish. I could be speaking in Spanish and English. So that's a great connection. Is small videos and finding friends like you have me now. You have me as a friend. So finding friends out there that are from that background that can give you insight on any lesson in your curriculum.
I would like to unpack a little bit the terminology of Afro-Latino, Afro-Latinx, because when we are looking at teaching Black history in the United States, or the African American experience in the United States, and then there's the Latino, the Hispanic heritage, but to specifically look at Afro-Latinx, where you're bringing the Black experience and the Latino experience together as one. So how do you see that as just an incredible opportunity, and how might it be different than just focusing on Black or just Hispanic, but the Afro-Hispanic Latino experience?
Oh yeah, it's definitely different. It's so different. Like I remember yesterday, we were sitting around and doing a project with the eighth graders. We're working on our Black History Museum at the school. And I told them, okay, make sure you get a Afro-Latino, and they were like, okay, how about this person? I'm like, no, that's not Afro-Latino. And I had to just say, hey guys, just get a Black person. They're like, oh, okay, we didn't know. It's like they've never heard of that term. And I forgot they're in my new semester. Like this January now, and it's a new semester of Intro to Spanish students. So I'm thinking I've had them for years for some reason, and I'm like, get an Afro-Latino from Colombia, and they're like, and they're telling me all these names. And I'm like, no, no, no. But once I said Black, then I had to get into that, because I couldn't just say Black. I said, okay, there's some people that they don't look Black, and they're Afro-Latinos. Like I had to say like Mariah Carey, and they're like, what? She's Black? I'm like, she's Afro-Latina, but she probably doesn't consider herself Black. There's some Afro-Latinos that don't consider themselves Black. That's another conversation, another podcast episode. But I had to get that conversation in so they could understand that identity is important, that some people consider themselves this, but some people consider themselves that. So I do like to include how there's Hispanics, celebrate Hispanics, Latinos as a whole, and that there are Hispanics that get offended when you label Afro. When you put Afro in front of it, why are you? And I get that in YouTube. I get a lot of little haters that say, you're just Dominican. Why you gotta make us a color? And I'm like, no, it's just that we're separated already by the way we act and the way we look. So since we're separated and sometimes we need to like straighten our hair for some reason because that's the norm, then yeah, we have to go ahead and put that label of Afro to show you that we're different and we're proud. And then with Black history, totally different way. Now we are connected, but a totally different location. They're in the United States. So the African American experience is totally a different experience. And I noticed that when living in Alabama. This is where I learned everything. Alabama has been truly my textbook to life, to Black history. So as I told you, like I was walking that civil rights trail in Anniston where I live, and learning about the burning of the bus and all this stuff, it's like all of those struggles that they've had are not the same as the Afro-Latino struggle, in our countries. It's totally different. In our countries, it's more passive. You don't really talk about it. You say certain words, you say certain things, but you don't come out and say things. When in the African American culture is so different. It's just, When you're talking about kids, I still have my little foster baby that she says she doesn't want to be my friend because she's light. She's light and I'm dark. That's what she says. And
Hmm.
I'm like, oh no. And they're little and they're having these conversations when in Latin America we don't have those conversations about that. Not so little.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about your experience being in the rural South in Alabama and being
Hmm.
one of the pieces of representation. And so for teachers who work in areas like that rural South or just in areas where these conversations may not be as common, and how can they introduce these topics in ways that foster curiosity and really meaningful discussions beyond just the representation?
Okay, that has been a really tricky area there. You're right because you stand out and then you're bringing up Black history and it's like who is bringing up Black history? Nobody. Actually, in our school, in our area, they don't celebrate Black history. There's no Black history shows. The schools are not doing Black history, so it's really sad. So I found that what's effective is bringing up the struggles, like having the connection of oh, Black History Month is here, which means this is a wonderful time to see the heroes and to talk about resilience, talk about those hidden stories, talking about the successes through the struggle. See, nowadays, with young people, teaching young people, they fall apart over simple things. They're like, "Oh no, my life is over." And you're like, "But look at this struggle. Look at what these people have had to go through." And they came out like while we're doing projects in the classroom, I play the Netflix movie The 6888 in Spanish. And while they're watching, they're looking and they're like, "Oh, what is that?" I don't even say anything. I'm just like, they're like, "Oh, what is that?" "Oh, they're delivering mail, but they have to go through all that mail?" "Well, why are they treated like that?" And then I do that on purpose. I'm not even saying, "Hey guys, we're gonna watch the 6888." Nothing like that. I just play it, and it's loud and it's in Spanish. And with the sound effects, they stop to look and they ask questions. So in the rural South, I can't just come out and say, "Hey, there was slavery and this happened and the other happened." I have to really just talk about the struggles and say, "Listen, guys, because they went through this, they're better people. They went through this. Look at the unity." I love talking about the unity that united we could get so much done. I love talking about the resilience. I love to see the success after those ladies were tasked to sort through so much mail and they were able to do it in record time. It's like you can do that too. So that's how I connect the rural South to Black history and to me
Hmm.
too, really to me, to
Hmm.
anybody.
Yeah.
So this is how I've been able to do it.
So you're finding these ways to really find a voice and to understand the experience, and then that becomes the respect piece and really understanding the plight of it. And I think there's another side, and this is where I've had my own learning journey, is I can get a little too focused on having my audience be the white kids and
Mm,
understanding. And you can sometimes, I say you, but I mean me, again, talking with I language, lose sight of who are those students in the classroom who are that difference that you're talking about. And so
mm,
I have to be careful that we go right to the trauma story and the resilience. And that's really great for those students who aren't identifying that way. But then for those students who are identifying that way, I have to find those stories of happiness and success, that I'm not just showing your story as one of trauma. And
that's right.
that's really challenging. And so I would just be curious. I know you're in a situation where you don't have a bunch of Afro Latino students in your
Mhm.
classroom, but what are some ways that you could maybe suggest to teachers that they are also considering validating their own experience and giving them hope in their identity rather than just focusing on the trauma experience, which tends to be what's needed for the white students to understand? So how could we bridge that?
It's the happy stories, the successes. Like most students want to be something, they want to be somebody. and connecting them with those stories of success. And sometimes it's just like, it's not enough. Martin Luther King, George Washington Carver, Rosa Parks, like they know these people. Sometimes it's the living legends. Sometimes it's the people who are alive right now. How did Barack Obama survive being in the White House? How did he not get killed? It's like sometimes it's like, how does this happen? How do you connect with that? And sometimes it's like, okay, look what he's done and any positive that he did. We're not thinking about politics. We're not talking about that, but we're talking about all the positive things that he has done, and connecting with them is like, what would you like to do that they've done? Like, do you think you are capable of doing that? And if something like, no, we can't. I said, but look, these people didn't do it alone. These people had a community of people that backed them up. So you can do it. You can get there. You can do it too. So for my community of students, it is like that. My students are mostly white. And then I'll have like a speck of one black kid here, one black kid here. And sometimes it's like the opposite feeling, that the black kid is feeling like, oh, she's talking about us.
Mm-hmm.
She is. She's talking about the Black history.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're going to look at me now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. They're going to look at me. But what I do during that time is that I never involve that black, quote unquote, black child into the conversation. I never say, hey, what do you think? I don't say, oh, I let them come out of their comfort zone and say what they need to say. So if kids are just in awe about the 6 AAA movie and what's going on, that normally that black child, the African-American child, is not joining in that conversation. They're not like, yeah, they actually did that and they're so cool. No, they probably just stay quiet and, keep on going. And this is mainly around Black History Month. They do that. But the other kids happen to be involved because there's a majority of them. And if we're talking about great stories and success, they're going to be talking about those successes as well.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do this with your younger students? Because you in your school, you're working with kindergarten and first grade as well as high school students. So how are you having these conversations with your younger students?
I started in the beginning when I started working there. I started with telling them my immigration story. So I would tell them like, hey guys, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. What's that? And I would say, well, there's a group of people in the US and I have to do the mapping. I have to do a map. Tell them this is us in the United States. This is the world. We go to Google Earth. This is the world. This is us in the United States. And then this is Alabama. This is where we're at. And they're like, oh, that's little. I'm like, yeah, we are little, but that's where we are. And in Alabama, this is our school. So we go to the school. I have to do all of this prepping. Then after that, I say, oh, and Senior Whyte, she came from Dominican Republic. So I type up Dominican Republic and it takes me all the way to the island. It's like that Google Earth draws you like if you're flying, and they're like, whoa, you're from far away. And I said, yes. And when I was born, my mom said, hola baby, hola bebé. And they said, huh? They said, yeah. So everybody around me said, hola bebé, and they spoke to me in Spanish. And then one day when I was bigger, my mom and dad brought me to the United States and I was new here and I didn't know anything. And everybody was saying, hello, baby. And I didn't even know what hello, baby meant. So, yeah, I had to learn how to speak English. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people like me started coming to the United States that said, hola, bebé. I need to write a children's book about that.
And so it's going to be called Hola, bebé.
It's going to be called Hola, bebé. You already know the title, yeah. So then I'm like, all these other kids, and I say it like a point of view of kids. That all these kids come and they say, hola, bebé, and people are saying, hello, baby, and they don't understand what that means. And I said, all these kids that say hola, bebé speak Spanish. So now there's so many of them that we got to celebrate them in our country. So this month, we're going to celebrate everybody that says hola, bebé, and we're going to celebrate all the different countries, and then we do the flags. So then we do the flag. And then I do the same similar thing when it's Black History Month. I said, oh, this is the continent of Africa. And all these people in this continent, they travel to the United States, and now there's a bunch of them. And because there's a bunch of them, we got to celebrate. And then I would say something like, okay, so how many people here are from this area or this? Okay, so today we're going to celebrate everybody from this neighborhood. Hey! yay, don't you feel special? Because everybody's from that neighborhood. So the same thing with Black History Month. We celebrate the group of people who are in the United States that are doing great things. So I have this calendar that is like every day for 28 days is a Black History highlight. So I show that calendar and I'm like, look, these people did wonderful things. And we have to say, hola, baby, because they've done such a good job in our country. They actually made the country better. And this is how I introduce Hispanic heritage and Black history, because I don't talk about the slave struggle. I don't mention that. They're too small. They're like pre-K. And some of them are Black and they don't know they're Black. So I don't talk about the color either. I don't want to make it an obvious thing that the parents will be like, oh my gosh, my kid now is asking questions about Black. No, instead they're asking questions about the flag. So what we did this week, since we're doing Black history, I started with the flag. They painted the flag. We did, like, let's say one class does Colombia. So they painted a flag with these really cool sticks that are tempera paint. I don't know if you guys know about this new technology of art, but they use sticks and they're called quick sticks and it's tempera paint. And I tell them, this is the flag from Colombia. Can you make it just like this with these colors? I can't make it pink or anything. And that's when I say, no, the American flag can't be pink. So this flag cannot be pink. And I always compare what they know. So then when they make that flag, then that's when I say, wow, this is Colombia. And I show them the pictures of Colombia. And then that's when I say, this is some of the instruments from Colombia. And that's how I introduce Black history. I say, oh, these instruments were from a group of people that came from Africa to Colombia. Remember the Hello Baby? They came to Colombia and they made Colombia great because they made these instruments. And then I said, this is a music group called Choki Town. Let's dance to this music. How does this music make you feel? And then they say, well, these people that came from Africa have different styles of dance that shows how they feel. And they've shared it with all of us. So I want to see you dancing. I want to see, how do you feel when you hear this music? And that's how I do Black history in the elementary school level. It's totally different. Totally different than the high school, because we can't talk about the obvious. You got to be careful with the critical race theory that we have in our state. We're not allowed to talk about certain things. We're not allowed to bring up things. So I can't talk about it that young, even if I was allowed. It's just not appropriate with the age level.
You mentioned the Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month, and I will attribute this to Allison Perryman, who I've known for a couple of years. She's been on the podcast a couple of times, and when we were talking about the heritage months that are throughout the year, I always have this question, which I'm going to ask you as well. How do you continue outside of that month designated to it to bring it in your classroom? But I just wanted to attribute to Allison the framework that she has helped me to understand this. And she said on the podcast that, you know, when we are doing Hispanic Heritage Month or Black History Month or Women's History Month, that it is passing the mic to those people during that month or putting the spotlight on them, but the rest of the light is not going off on the stage, but it's highlighting and amplifying their voice, I think is the actual language she used. You're amplifying their voice during that month, but then they're going to pass the microphone to somebody else to amplify in a different month, but their voice isn't going away. And I just think that is such a beautiful framework to think about these. So I will ask you, outside of Hispanic Heritage Month or Black History Month, how are you continuing to weave those topics into your year throughout the year?
Throughout the year, yes. And I love what Allison says. That is so true, because the way I do it in a concrete way is that I look at the units I'm going to do throughout the year. So when I look at the units that I'm doing throughout the year, I make sure that I incorporate it in different ways. So if it's about fashion, like right now we're learning in Voces, that's the curriculum I use. If I'm reading the story Un Vestido para Shakira, which is a dress for Shakira, it's focused on Shakira. She's great. If it wasn't Black History Month, I would be saying, okay, so let's talk about fashion. And well, what I would introduce is fashion designers that are fashion designers. So we would introduce the music of Afro-Colombia. It wouldn't be like I'm highlighting it. It's like throughout the year, I don't say, oh yeah, they're Afro-Latinos. I don't really say that. I just incorporate it. I just bring it in. I make sure that it's in everything. And that's not only with them. I talk about the Chinese, I talk about the Asians that are in Latin America, because they're really they're a source. They're there and they're making business there in every country in Latin America. So I like to bring them up. So throughout the year, I'm highlighting everybody who's not being highlighted, maybe in a book, even though Voces does a great job doing that. But sometimes if they don't have something, I incorporate more information about it. And then when it comes to Black History Month, just like Allison says, that's so good about passing the mic. It's like, oh, it's our turn. Yay. It's our turn to just talk about the subjects head on, because it's giving me permission to talk about it. Like, this is when I can talk about racism. I can talk about colorism. I can talk about, like, there's TV show called Colin in Black and White. It's on Netflix. And this Colin in Black and White, we watch it in Spanish. And I just show some clips, but it's talking about microaggressions. And this is when I have the permission. So I see Black History, Hispanic History Month to give me certain permissions to talk about those edgy things that I don't really talk about all year round, unless kids bring it up. If kids bring it up, yeah, we go there. But if they don't bring it up, then I definitely bring it up during that month.
So I think that during those months, we're focusing on them, but because everyone is focusing on them, we see the social media posts, we see the resources. And so there just tends to be more available during those months that we can pull from. Like you were talking about finding your YouTube videos or your TikTok videos that you're showing in your class earlier. And I think that during these months, they're just more plentiful. So we can find them as we're amplifying the voice. But it's just so important to keep in mind that when those stop happening, that we are continuing to bring it in there.
That's
and
right.
I really like that the use of the word permission. That's what you kept saying, that you have permission to do that. And it's almost because it's expected that you're talking about this right now. So you don't have to explain why you're talking about it right now.
Exactly.
That's how I was sort of understanding that word permission. So you've put together some whole school Black history and Hispanic heritage programs, and you specifically told me that you do it with no budget. And anybody listening that wants to do something, as soon as they say it was no budget or minimal money or something like that, I want to hear more. So what are some creative ways that teachers can do the same in their schools?
Okay, so take some notes, because I'm about to tell you. So in my school, it's an independent school, and probably in public school is the same thing. It's hard to be asking for money for certain things, especially if it's stuff that they've never done before. So I'm gonna start with the first one that I came up with was step dance. Well, first of all, I got tired of inviting people from the community to come and speak to the students, because they end up getting on their phone. You see them yawning. I don't see any engagement. It could be a really good speaker, and I'm like on edge, like this is good stuff. But the kids are not taking away what I need them to take away. So I said, okay, you know what? If I want the whole school to get a glimpse of my classroom, that's definitely because I'm also encouraging language learning as well. So if I want that, I need to do something that the students lead it and the students participate in it. So the first one I did was, what is step dance? So I called up the nearest HBCU. I talked to the one of the teachers, and it's not easy. Sometimes you got to do all this research, and you got to do it early, and you have to tell them, hey, do you have a fraternity or sorority of kids that may want to come to my school and teach the basics of step dance? And maybe you as a teacher, can you talk about the connection of Black history and the dance? And they're like, yeah, because most people want to talk about things. And when you talk about a subject that they never talked about, this is really cool. And then, they're coming to a school where there's not many Black kids. So I say, please, I would love for my kids to learn about this. So what I do to prep the kids in my classroom is that I introduce them to the different types of dances in Latin America, the zapateo, everything that's connected to Afro descendants and the dance and the step specifically. So we do zapateo in the class, and 5 minutes of zapateo today. They start dancing zapateo. Everything's on YouTube. I don't I don't know everything. So I look on YouTube, what's zapateo, and they start dancing it. And I also tell them, how do we connect this to other dances? They're also the Argentine tango. They do a lot of stepping. They said, oh, that's like tap dance. that's like the river dance, the Irish dance. I said, yes, every culture has some kind of step dance. So how about the African American step dance? So then after I do Latin America in my classroom, then I'm merging into African American culture so I could bring it to the whole school. By then, all my students in my classes, which my language classes are a little bigger than I think I have I have a lot of kids in my language classes. So if by the time that school assembly comes, my students are like, yeah, step dance. They're like, step dance. I also get a YouTube video and said, hey guys, can you do this step dance before we have this assembly? And they practice also 5 minutes in the beginning of the period. It's like my brain break in the beginning. Just 5 minutes, practice the step dance. And they're like doing all these noises, clapping, doing all this stuff. And then they get it. And then they have a connection. Then I show them some clips about a movie called Step Sister, which is about a white girl in college who joins a black sorority, and she's joining a black step group. And at first they're like, oh, white people, no, they can't step. But at the end of the movie, it's wonderful because yes, white people can step with black people. And it's like a unity thing. I'm always going back to the unity thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh my gosh, we can do this. So then the kids got so excited in my school that they wanted to start a step team. And I said, well, I'm not prepared to do that because I don't know. But I connected the university with my school to see if they were interested in doing that. So what is step dance was a wonderful representation because those kids came, they're young. It's not these older people. So automatically all the little boys and girls looking at these kids with these googly eyes like, oh, he's fine. Oh, she's fine. Forget it. I got their attention. So when they presented and they said, who wants to help us? Who wants to come up here and step dance? Half the room gets up and they're dancing. I almost cried because I'm thinking, this is, oh my gosh, my school. You know who they are. They are following and doing a step dance. Oh my gosh. When I did that one, I said, oh, it's on now. So then I went on to doing what is black hair. Hair is important to Latin Americans and to Afro descendants as a whole. So I did an assembly, what is black hair, invited a lady called Dea LaVey. She's like a celebrity hairstylist, and she has her own shop and she does locks. Like they call them dreadlocks. But she doesn't call them dreadlocks. She calls them locks. So I invited her and she brought all this hair. She brought braids. She brought locks. She had a display of stuff that kids could come and touch. And then the kids did a slideshow of what is hair, what is a cornrow, what is a lock, what is this, what is the history of the cornrow, the maps and the hair that the enslaved people did, created to find a map. All of this stuff was already pre-done. Like they learned all that before the lady came. So when she was there, it was like, then the whole school is there, but then my language students are the ones that know everything because they're like, yeah, we know that. Yeah, we learned that. But when she said, hey, let's have a braiding competition, I mean, it was amazing. We had a fashion show. They had those wigs. They got to touch and it's awkward for white kids to touch a black person's hair. That's inappropriate. You can't do that. So she made it in a way where they could touch the hair without having an awkward moment. Hey guys, come touch this hair. Oh, I want to touch it. So they're touching the hair. It's real hair. They have a hair braiding competition. I mean, I was like, this is amazing. Another successful assembly. No money at all. No money. If you wanted to spend any money is to send them a thank you. But what they did was that they wrote thank you cards and she put it in her shop, or she took the thank you cards. But it's not like I didn't have any money. The first assembly, I didn't have any money either. So I just want to tell you, zero budget. So then the next one I wanted to include is this one had money, but it's donated. So we did the history of soul food. That was my theme last year, the history of soul food. So the kids in Spanish class researched different dishes that I already gave them and find the connection of Black history to that food. Oh, that was so much fun. They love food. So they did it. They did these little foldable activities that they can put on a table. And then we asked parents to sign up. Now, it's amazing to be able to involve a white community to bring these dishes, because they found the dishes from everywhere, or they made them because then they realized, wait, this is the food we eat. Soul food? We eat soul food? Well, we call it Southern food over here, but soul food and Southern food are the same thing. I've never told them that. I let them discover it. So when they were all eating, oh, you eat that too? Oh, you like fried chicken? I like fried chicken. It's like, so we had this buffet. It was beautiful, Joshua. It was amazing how we had this buffet of food, and right next to the food was the interpretation of that connection of Black history to that food that the kids did. So they were leading it. Then to top it off, we invited the nearest school to us, the nearest public school to us, which happens to be mostly African American students in that school. They came and they sang a song. They ate with us, and it was beautiful because that's never happened before. That was a beautiful bridge to connect two schools together that would never connect that way. They're always playing against each other in sports. So this was a very good representation.
Well, those are fascinating. And I'm sure that teachers are thinking right now, where can I find these people in my community? I want to bring them in. And I love that. It's tangible. You talked about actually touching the hair, but it is like, it's very tangible, these things with fashion and food and all of that. Like, it is actually tangibly engaging with the culture, and it's not just this theoretical thing. I absolutely love those ideas. And now I'm sad that I'm not 12 years old and able to be a student in your class now. No, it just sounds fascinating. I want to do all these things.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I am sure that there are teachers that are feeling very inspired, and they would like to connect with you to continue these discussions and these conversations. So how can we be reaching out to you?
I have a Afro-Latina teacher on Facebook. If you could look me up there. I have a X account or Twitter account. It's called, no. You could look up Afro-Latina teacher and you can find me. That's where I'm at in Instagram, Twitter, X, and in YouTube. All of those are Afro-Latina teacher is me. So if you want to look at me there, my website's going to be up and running by the end of this month, and it's going to be jennifferwhyte.com. And my name is spelled with 2 N's and 2 F's. And then my last name is with a Y, White with a Y. So it's a different type of white girl. That's what I say in Alabama. Yeah, you never met this white girl. I'm always cracking jokes with people. Some people get offended, some people don't. But so yeah, check me out with that. And I would love to answer any questions, connect with you. I've met so many wonderful people throughout the years that are trying to do these things for their classrooms. And I did want to share with you guys real quick what I'm doing this year with the kids is that we didn't want to be showy today. We didn't want to do a show. So we're doing a Black History Museum. We're taking up a whole hallway, and the students in every level are doing special projects. So all Spanish students are focusing on the Afro and Latin Americans, and then we have the French classes are doing the Afro-Franco culture, and then everybody else, the culture club, is going to be doing different things: hair, music, listening stations where they're gonna come by and and this is totally free. We just need paper. So I just send a letter to the parents saying, I need paper, I need tape, I need stuff to mount stuff on the wall if you want to help me. And I get more than enough paper and stuff. And that's what we did. That's what we're doing this year, that doesn't cost any money as well.
Yes. So hopefully you'll be putting pictures of that stuff on social media so we can all check it out.
I always do. I always put that. Yes, definitely.
Yes. So I will make sure that all of your social media handles are in the show notes. And I'll also put the link to the AATSP conference for this summer. So can go right there and sign up if they're not already signed up. And as we leave, I like to leave our listeners with a real juicy, hearty piece of advice. So what advice could you leave with teachers? It can be about bringing the Afro-Latino experience into the classroom or teaching in general. But what's some advice you can leave us with?
Well, I just want to give advice to those teachers that always feel uncomfortable about bringing up these topics. Always bring up struggles. Struggles is a universal topic. You can talk about struggles and anybody connects. So when you talk about struggles versus, struggles leading into successes, just like a kid who struggles in math and then he passes that class, that's a success. But he went through several struggles to get there. So bringing up these conversations about African Americans, Black history, all of this, talk about the struggle and then lead into the success, because it's just a different thing than just saying, yeah, they went through this and they beat them and they no, just talk about how difficult it was and how they came out of it. And this always brings some kind of motivation in them that if they can do it and they had no resources, then you can do it with internet, AI, everything that you have. You can do it. And this is just a Black History should be a you can do it month. Like, you got this. You're more than able to do something like that. So just if you can see that as, instead of being uncomfortable, see it as a celebration, then that would help you.
Well, thank you for leaving us with that framework of thinking about this, with the struggle leading to success. And if we could just wrap our brains around that and make sure that that is what we're doing when we're presenting anything with culture that has anything about an uncomfortable situation in their lives and how they dealt with it and bringing it to that success and showing that to students. So helpful. Well, Jenniffer Whyte, this has been an absolute pleasure. I always learn so much from you, and you get all the gears turning in my head and thinking about things in a different way. You're a delightful person to talk to, and your insights are incredible. Josh. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I really do.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Jenniffer Whyte? I hope the conversation sparked some ideas for bringing the variety of cultures associated with the target language that you teach to your classroom and school. Be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Jenniffer Whyte. You'll also see the link to sign up for Talking Points, my weekly email newsletter with tips and resources for language teaching. There are also links to get in touch with me if you would like to work together, and we can do that either in person in your school or remotely. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the World Language Classroom podcast. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. Connect with me on X, aka Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WL Classroom. And for even more valuable resources, visit my website, WLClassroom.com, where you'll find over 300 blog posts about language teaching. So stay inspired, keep growing, and continue making a difference in your language classroom.